15 most luxurious fashion brands. 15. Dolce & Gabbana. Though this Italian luxury fashion house hasn't been around so long as some of its competitors, it's definitely managed to create a name for itself in the world of fashion. The brand was created by two friends named Domenico Dolce and Stefano Gabbana, after the two met designing for the same fashion house in 1982. 3 years later, the pair would form what would eventually become Dolce & Gabbana. Today, the Dolce & Gabbana brand is known for its expensive and well-made clothing, along with their equally well-known controversies. This includes when the pair announced their dislike for same-sex couples adopting, even though they're both gay men, and in vitro fertilization. The brand has also released several advertisements that have been pulled because of the controversy of their nature. 14. Dior. As with plenty of fashion houses, Dior is named after its founder, Christian Dior, who did so back on December 16, 1946. The company specializes in creating French luxury goods, such as ready-to-wear footwear and fashion accessories. The brand started out creating women's fashion, but has since branched out to create a line of menswear and even a child's division called Baby Dior, while still focusing on women's clothes. The company's future wasn't always stable, unlike how it is today. When Dior passed away, the company plunged into chaos and was almost shut down, but thankfully saved when they brought on a 21-year-old, Yves Saint Laurent, as a new artistic director. 13. Armani. The Italian fashion house is relatively new when compared to the other brands on this list, as it was only founded back in 1975 by one Giorgio Armani. The Armani brand sells it all, from haute couture to home interiors and everything else in between. It was back in 1980, with the release of the film The American Gigolo, that Armani really blew up the scene, when Richard Gere was seen sporting one of Armani's now famous hand-tailored suits. The elegance of Armani isn't just contained to simply clothing, as the company has also created a series of cafes, a bar, and even a nightclub. With 10 different brands under the Armani name and around 500 stores all over the world, it's no wonder the company is worth $3.1 billion. 12. Fendi. One of the most well-known names in the fashion world, Fendi was created by married Italian couple, Adele and Edoardo, back in 1925. What started out as a small fur and leather shop in Via del Plebiscito, Rome, would continuously grow into the multinational luxury brand that it is today. Their production of the Fendi baguette purse really solidified the brand as a luxury name, as well as their innovative techniques when it comes to using fur. The company was put under fire by PETA in 2015, more specifically its creative director Karl Lagerfeld, for orchestrating a haute couture fur fashion show. But the $3.5 billion company has somewhat done some form of good, as they donated more than €2 million towards the restoration of the Trevi Fountain. 11. Balmain. The name Balmain simply evokes a sense of opulence as it rolls off the tongue. Started in 1946, Pierre Balmain had no idea his House of Balmain would become one of the most influential couture fashion houses. When it came to creating clothing that was sophisticated and had a great deal of elegance to it, Balmain was at the front and center. Opened in 1945, the house would have its first collection featured in Vogue and would eventually gain prominent celebrity clients, such as Ruth Ford. The brand would be taken over by Balmain's right hand, Eric Mortensen, after his passing in 1982. Since 2011, it's been under the creative direction of Oliver Roosting, who has revamped the fashion house with fresh ideas. 10. Hermès. Dating all the way back to 1837, Hermès was created by the Frenchman Thierry Hermès, where he created and sold specially designed wrought harnesses and girdles for carriages. His son Charles inherited the company, and his two sons Adolphe and Émile Maurice helped their father create bags for horse riders to carry their saddles, and other saddle-related products. Over the course of time, the company has stayed within the Hermès family, but their range of products has grown to include luxury goods such as perfumes, jewelry, and their famous silk scarves. The $10.6 billion company relies on one artist handling a single product, from beginning to end, rather than depending on mass production to ensure certain standards are met. 9. Burberry. One of London's most famous luxury brands, Burberry also happens to be one of the largest clothing businesses in all of Britain. The brand was founded by Thomas Burberry back in 1856 and solely focused on creating fashionable outerwear. Burberry would eventually become famous for its trademarked check print, as well as trench coats, and partly in thanks to the 1961 movie Breakfast at Tiffany's, that saw Audrey Hepburn wearing a Burberry wool trench coat. By the 70s and 80s, the brand saw a massive expansion and helped catapult it into a household name. Even the likes of British royalty, such as Her Majesty Elizabeth II and Prince Charles, have requested that the $5.87 billion brand make clothing for them. 8. Ralph Lauren. The corporation was established back in 1967, only selling men's ties at the time, as Lauren worked for the tie manufacturer Beau Brummel. He convinced the company's president to let him create his own collection of ties, and then went on to create his own line of menswear, that is the famous Polo Ralph Lauren. From there, he got an in-store shop for the department store Bloomingdale's, which happened to be the first time the company ever gave a designer their own. As of last year, it was reported that there were 493 operating stores under the company, and it's valued at $6.6 billion. Lauren has gone on to dress celebrities like Robert Redford in 1974's The Great Gatsby and Diane Keaton in 1977's Annie Hall. 7. Givenchy. This French luxury fashion house has been producing some of the most iconic haute couture clothing since it was first opened by Hubert de Givenchy back in 1952. Perhaps the most revolutionary being the little black dress that Givenchy designed for none other than Miss Audrey Hepburn for the 1961 film Breakfast at Tiffany's. The creation of the little black dress has managed to become a staple in the closets of women everywhere to this day. The brand would go on to dress other big celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor, Princess Grace of Monaco, and even Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Today, a little black dress from Givenchy will set you back at least $1,500 to $2,000. 6. Chanel. The high fashion wear company was introduced to the world back in 1909 by none other than Gabriel Bonheur Chanel, otherwise known as Coco Chanel. This is where the brand gets its inspiration for the famously recognizable logo that is two interlocking C's. The company specializes in creating haute couture for its wealthy clients, but also for fashion models like Naomi Campbell, who once modeled for them, and actress Marilyn Monroe, Keira Knightley, and Nicole Kidman. One of their most famous products is the perfume No. 5 de Chanel, along with the Chanel suit. Today, Chanel's valued at being $6.8 billion. An interesting fact to note is that Karl Lagerfeld, the creative director behind Fendi, happens to be the creative director for Chanel as well. 5. Prada. Founded back in 1913 by Mario Prada, this fashion brand actually started out by manufacturing leather bags and trunks. It would then evolve into selling everything from clothing to perfume, and even a brief stint of LG Prada cell phones. Though the brand may have broadened its inventory, it still spends the majority of its focus creating some of the world's most exclusive handbags that only the rich and famous can possibly hope to afford. Mario Prada believed that women should not be involved in business, so he excluded his own family members from getting involved. But in a fantastic twist of irony, his son didn't care to run the business, so his daughter, Luisa Prada, took over as his successor, and it's now currently being run by her daughter. 4. House of Versace. The fashion empire that is the House of Versace all started with fashion designer Gianni Versace back in 1978. He created a brand that's since been synonymous with elegance and simply oozes high fashion. His glamorous gowns have gone on to make a name for himself as a respected designer, like the case of the famous black dress held with gold safety pins that actress Elizabeth Hurley wore back in 1994. To the premiere of 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Sadly, Versace's life was cut short in 1997. On the steps of his Miami mansion, when he became the 5th and final victim of Andrew Cunanan. The tragic event will be the story behind American Crime Story Season 2, titled The Assassination of Gianni Versace. After his death, his sister Donatella became the new artistic director and has established a $5.5 billion company her brother would be proud of. 3. Gucci. Started in 1921 by a Mr. Guccio Gucci, the company was originally dabbling in leather goods. It wasn't until 19 years later when his son Aldo would take the company from being a one-stop shop to the fashion powerhouse it is now. It's Aldo that would usher in the era of the brand's iconic bamboo bag and its ready-to-wear sentiments. In the 90s, the company decided to bring American fashion designer Tom Ford to revamp their women's wear. He ended up helping to launch the brand where it is today. The fashion brand houses other well-known designers in its collections, such as Alexander McQueen, Stella McCartney, and Yves Saint Laurent. If you're in the market to do some shopping at this $12.4 billion brand, expect to spend at least $2,000. Number 2. Louis Vuitton. This may come as a shock, but the famous fashion brand has been around longer than you might have thought. Formed 163 years ago, in 1854, a young man by the name of Louis Vuitton started out as an apprentice for a box maker. Vuitton ended up becoming a well-known crafter of luxury trunks and opened his own shop in Paris. He then ended up becoming the personal box maker of Napoleon III's wife, Empress Eugenie. Fast forward years later, and the company is now worth $28.1 billion, with a generated revenue of $10.1 billion. Today, Louis Vuitton doesn't just make trunks, but designer handbags and clothing that can be spotted on the most famous of A-listers. Number 1. Balenciaga. The beginning of Balenciaga's reign began back in 1919. When it was established by its founder of the same name, Cristobal Balenciaga. As a young child, he became the apprentice to a tailor in his hometown of Giarda, Spain, and would eventually get his formal training in Madrid. He would go on to create the House of Balenciaga, and skyrocketed to success thanks to his artistic genius. He was hailed as the undisputed king of fashion, and was highly respected among his peers, which included the likes of Coco Chanel, Christian Dior, and Pierre Balmain. Balenciaga even helped train the likes of the high fashion designers Oscar de la Renta and Hubert Givenchy, just to name a few. Get inside my mind with new videos daily, and don't forget to subscribe.